One Punch Man. It's ended like a couple months ago, but we got some blog, you could say. I want to read this blog, and also for my own monetary gain. So, you know, so it's kind of worth it for me. Thank you for Sarka, as usual. I usually use a lot of his stuff, really good informative stuff, and also I think he also made this blog, if I remember. Go here, I think. Wow, he has put his name down here, so it's gotta be. Yeah, maybe he helps. He got help for some, but yeah, we'll just read this through, and I don't know how long this is gonna be. Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of text, so we'll see how this goes. If it's gonna be an hour, if it's gonna be an hour. If I yap a bit too much, I yap a bit too much. Oh well, let's see. Anyways, if you wanna see the blog or whatever this is called, you can go in the description if you wanna read it yourself. But let's cue the retarded music. Anyways, what happened to One Punch Man season 3? Dog shit happened. Anyways, One Punch season 3 has swelled into a memetic, whatever status as audience use the new season of the series to reference bad or disappointing adaptation. Although the Invincible's new season was trashier. Some has advocated, probably a better word, studio teaching staff of complete fault of the show's shortcoming, while others found the company explicitly responsible for the show's mess alongside its production committee and primary producer Bandai Namco. The contextual evidence points somewhere in the middle. Certain circumstances put the show in a precarious position. Poor managing and commitment by the studio made that situation much worse, and the committee seemingly had little effort to commit the project. And that's the thing. Is it all Bandai's fault? Mostly, yes. At the same time, TC Staff is not innocent. Again, TC Staff's problem, but the studio is quantity over quality. They pump out a lot of shows. Thank you for the follow. They pump out a lot of shows and lead that to a lot of stuff that's happening. Also, I think a show that was also airing at the same time was Mugen Gacha, and Mugen Gacha definitely made a certain guy hop ship from One Punch Man season 3 and worked on Mugen Gacha. So yeah, midway through production might have snatched him to work on Mugen Gacha, and he contributed not much considering his output is probably one of the best in the industry. So that's gonna be pretty unfortunate. But a good analysis of the show that already existed and takes into consideration general industry ideas and comprehension to One Punch Man's previous season is totally not Mark's video. We've reacted to this video. Very base level information, but for a show called One Punch Man, there was a lot of normies, so I recommend watching this video. It's also by also Kevin also helped it. Again, produced with his from the Sakuboard team. Blah blah blah. Cover Monroe, take some. Yep. Project starts. Announcement don't mean anything in regards to when a series starts planning. Anime Ajay made a video on it too, or what? Nope, didn't do anything. Anyways. Oh, wait, what? Really? His editor? That's crazy. Okay. Anyways, announcement don't mean anything in regard to when. Yes, when something is announced, it doesn't mean that they're already in production. As we said, what? One Punch Season 3 was announced like what? 2022, 2023 or something? A couple years ago, right? And lo and behold, production time probably only had like 4 months. So that's it. But yeah, start pre-production. If anything goes wrong, has risen, can delay the project or outright destroy its schedule. When an example says production confirmed or production get greenlit, that is not an indication of the show starting the animation phase, already being in it. Again, there's pre-production where scripting, uh, gathering amount of talent, color designing, uh, character design, all the necessary stuff to really, skyrocket the project and make it in production, you can say. So, yeah, production confirmed can not just mean like production, actual production where animation is mostly in, but yeah, pre-production can also differ. Some can take couple years, some can take couple months, depends. To use a basic example, Kizumonogatari, of course, Sakura has to use something from Chef, was announced in 2010, released a fully animated promotion video in 2011. Wow, that looks completely. That looks a bit. That looks a bit different from the movie, or maybe the quality's not that good. Had a release date on early posters for 2012 or 2013 and didn't start animation production until around 2014. And when did the show actually air? Kizumonogatari, I think it was 2016. 2016, there we go. It was announced at 2011. It was just promotional advertising, and then yeah, it started actually production in early 2014. Again, didn't start animation production. There was probably a lot of pre-production for the show because visually it looks very, very cool, and of course it's a Shaft show. You know, most of the time Shaft shows, in terms of also their storyboarding phase, it might take a lot longer than usual because with Shaft they also do a lot of like revision storyboard, like what you call it, storyboard checks, you can say. They can take probably months, couple weeks more than usual, but yeah. According to Chief Animation Supervision Hiroki Yamamura joined day. In other words, when a project's animation process starts, it's basically a guessing game until someone on site says something specific. Some more knowledgeable community members can take accurate guesses on basis on staff compositions and final product, but these are never guaranteed estimations. See here, teaser poser, Aniplex. Some projects like Moonrise 2025 with studio has suspiciously lackluster marketing from its distributors for unknown reasons, but still end up looking relatively good. Subpar marketing is not a guarantee indication of incoming contentious, I'm sorry, I'm bad at English, or outright bad quality, but in other series purposely don't market material to hide the rough edges, or the fact there aren't any edges to show off. Like One Punch Man. Yeah, Moonrise was not really that marketed well. Of course, again, Moonrise and the One Piece remake is basically the same team. So, you know why One Piece remake is taking a lot longer than usual, because when the promotional video or whatever, the behind the scenes, they were still in pre-production. Probably very early in pre-production. One Punch Man 2 was barely marketed after its initial announcement in 2022. There were few updates in its release or progress. A teaser visual and teaser trailers were sparsely released into 2024, including a pre-anime trailer. I think that was by Kenichiro Aoki himself, and I think Ozawa helped a bit. I don't know if he was directing it or animation directing it. And then it was abruptly announced for an October 2025 debut. By then, not much was known about who was working on it. At Anime Expo 2025 in early July, voice actors and Bandai Namco producer Chinatsu Matsui had nothing news to share. Because, again, when was Expo 2025? Expo 2025, when was that? April. July. There probably wasn't finished even animating anything. Early in the year, JC Staff animation producer Atsushi Fujishiro also commented on the show was proceeding steadily. Their source of statement is more or less PR talk. That means we're working on it. It's impossible to divulge even vaguely what state of production the show is in just based on that statement. A producer from the studio or otherwise, it's unlikely to direct comments on bad situations because they're also published. Again, because probably contract stuff, because of course they can't talk bad to a certain, to a certain product that other people are funding, and other stuff, maybe contracts, NDAs. Regardless of how good or bad a product is, it's unsensible to not try or and hype it up. Sure, vague comments are an acknowledgement of the project and little else. Matsuo also did an interview published by New Type after the series started airing, mentioning episode 5 and episode 9 as highlights. Some see episode 5 lackluster and unfinished quality, though the whole show is unfinished. Again, episode 5 was probably the better animated episodes, but with all the hype market, fan Oba, it was definitely not the best. A bit lower than that. Maybe a lot lower than that. But episode 9 was also kind of I feel like if Takashi Hashimoto didn't really say anything, people's expectation would have heightened. Even if episode 8 was, the best episode of the series, I feel like I know episode 9 in terms of the pacing and direction was not even close to episode 8. I feel like episodes that felt like it was good directed, like everything doesn't feel like cuts, random cuts, was episode 1, episode 2, episode 8, and then the Atomic Samurai episode and Purple Prisoner episode. The two. That was probably only the 4 episodes out of like what, 12 or 13. That was like, for me, objectively was good directed. It wasn't lackluster in any way. So you have that. To be an indication of Matsui lying. TV anime producer are from the various committees members and talk primarily with the animation producer or upper executives from the studio. As the Bandai Namco producer, Matsui probably broadly know what's going on behind the scenes, but she's not at the studio overseeing productions and is unlikely to know the episode by episode specific details. Again, Bandai Namco producers, they're not in the fucking studio managing everything. They're not animation producers from JC Stuff. They're animation producers from Bandai Namco. They don't know shit. So yeah, it's not uncommon for an anime episode to be finished mere days before they air. So Matsuo's comments are hardly her knowledge of the production side coming through, especially depending on when the internet was conducted rather than when it was published. A likely scenario is that episode 5 was meant to be a priority episode and one brought up during the producers meeting, again because content wise it should have been it should have been the best episode of all time, but inevitably it was probably the most disappointing episode of all the seasons. So that's the thing. And yeah, there's also kind of confirmation that some episodes, I mean, this is not really a shock that some episodes were done merely days or even my Vegas just stopped. Anyways, but it's kind of obvious that some episodes were done very early. I think episode 8 was also the best looking episode, was also done very, very like probably finished couple hours before the air date. Not just because, of the screenshot we saw like a snippet of it. No, it was other factors too that I know personally. Anyways, and one brought it up during the producers' meeting with Ruichiro and other staff. But for one reason or another, it collapsed under its weight. The new director, after months of being in the dark, Shinbei Nagai was eventually announced as the new director. Some graced him with positive encouragement, others questioned his lack of like series experience, and then there's was the hentai director thing, calling Nagai a hentai director while saying it's shudo, isn't it? Feels like a put down. Yes, this is basically you saying, "Oh, he just does hentai. He doesn't do any fucking shonen Jujutsu Kaisen stuff." That is an insult in itself. So you have that. In making those comments, with respect to hentai as an art, which it is, let me be clear, there are obvious negative connotations in the context of describing the action shonen series One Punch Man's new director. Naga had been involved in hentai for a decade by the time his name was attached to the series. And again, hentai director, everyone is in hentai. Yeah, Tanaka, William Zhang, most of Shaft's fucking old fucking talented crew. Shimbo was also one of the best directors out there in history. So again, they need to put more investments in hentai. But besides that, yeah, not the best thing to say. The vast majority of Nagai's career over the last 30 years are relative standard anime production. He joined Shion Animation in the late 1990s as a production manager, where he befriended the late Hiroshi Ishida. Oh, oh 07. Unfortunate. Yikers. Well, I'm sorry for the loss. He moved with Nagai to Studio Ju Ni O. Cue the music. They parted as Nagai briefly worked at Radic and Ishida went to Synergy SP. I know that studio. And in 2004, Nagai incorporated his own small company called Studio Dragoon, officially founded in 2000, which he ran for another 3 years. The period in which he worked on hentai ranged from 2006 to 2015. That's a lot. Less than a third of his career now, during which he directed 2 OVAs in 2008 and 2011. Using these works, none of which are especially popular, to introduce Nagai over a decade later for a complete different TV anime project is odd. Kaguya-sama Love is War director Mamoru Hatakeyama, originating from Phoenix Entertainment, was a production staffer in mostly hentai starting in the late 1900s. He is also an ex-staff member, if I remember correctly. So there you have it. But that's not often brought up because it's rare. It's rarely relevant to his current work, because why? His work is good. Likewise, AAC, Magic Bus, 7 Arc, and Modern Pura subsidiary studio Signpost are rarely labeled as hentai studio, even though they each have hentai as part of their historical context, some more than others. The hentai director description are mostly clickbait, lazy research, and purposefully malicious, obviously. Nagai's openness with directing and experience was primarily about his lack of action-specific experience. His previous TV works as lead series director are limited to the short-form comedy series Inugami-san and Nekoyama-san, 2014-7, Studio 7, and I Can't Understand What My Husband Is Saying, and the ecchi Dogeza. I tried asking while Kotoming. Okay. Some took Nagai's comments as his admittance of the lack of directing experience in general, and while the three for aforementioned work may seem like little considering their 3 5 minutes episode series. He has helped as an assistant director in a couple of projects too. Again, Naga was not the person who was supposed to direct One Punch Man, but also, even if, again, you can criticize Nagai, sometimes maybe his lack of, managing other episodes where he just storyboarded every episode, that could also lean on some stuff being rushed. Again, his boards, he's very fast at storyboarding, and he also had to kind of storyboard in a one-to-one what you call it, in a one-to-one board. So that's the thing. Again, there was so little time, he had to resort. He knows how bad the conditions is, and hopefully moving forward, he's worked on the worst of the worst in terms of schedule. So hopefully he can understand that from for part two, of course. Unlike the film industry, assistant director referring to Shashamga does not refer to a liaison between the director and certain departments, or a manager that works with the director, or someone involved in the planning and budgeting of a project. In anime, an assistant director is usually a type of lower rank series director, which is balancing some of the work with the lead series director. And that's probably plainly obvious. But we don't know if he will be in part of second part, right? The assistant director has authority in making decisions, attending production and art meetings, and handling whatever work the director needs them to oversee. Tensura Season 1, 2018 8-bit studio. Director Yasuhito Kikuchi, for example, noted that he wasn't overseeing everything. Assistant director noted that he wasn't overseeing everything. Assistant director Atsushi Nakayama was doing and entrusted him with some parts of the project he couldn't get to. Again, probably tight schedules. So the screenshot here from a Tensura interview with Yasuhito Kikuchi was season 1 director, and then Nakayama did season 2 and 3. Okay, yeah, he was the director, and he did mostly the movie stuff. You were together before as directors in Comet Lucifer. How did you explain working together on that compared to Comet Lucifer's that one shitty adaptation, right? No. Okay. Different. Okay, I was thinking about another thing. Okay. Nakayama, it's also no different. Generally speaking, when the director is too busy to do things, I step in to handle it, like going to voice recording sessions and so on. Lately, we've been doing things together, though, because we have a longer schedule for Tensura compared to Comet Lucifer. Again, Tensura Season 1 was probably the best looking season of all time. Sorry, the best looking season of Tensura. And why? Even if it was like consecutive 2 cores, schedule. Season 1 usually has way more lenient in terms of production schedule, so you have that. With original anime, we need to look over the series as a whole, but this time there was a source material, so we've been dividing the workload a little differently. This time I've been taking on a bit of more personal responsibilities. Kikuchi, right? I barely looked over what we've been doing. Okay. Sorry. Nagai was the assistant director for Yoshitomi Yonetani's Vatican Miracle Examiner, and Shinsoku Machitani's directing debut Fantasia Sango. Geek Stories. 2022, he was also asked to do some help as directing assistant for 3 episodes of Koi Kimu Project 9 Studio. Okay. Production context and the director. Why was Nagai chosen as the director then? Why not someone else in the action avenue? Maybe because he wasn't the original director. PogChamp. Nagai wasn't chosen as the director, at least not originally. Nagai is a replacement director for someone who left the project earlier. By around late August 2025, I thought it was weird that there was still no director announced. Again, we still don't know how much involvement this supposedly original director was, whether the original director was done with pre-production and then left. Of course, he left because obviously schedule issues. He knows that this schedule is very, very fucked. A lot of fucks. So that's gonna be very deteriorating for, directors or even animators. Some animators probably didn't want to participate in One Punch Season 3 because, not because of the reputation of Season 3, but the schedule. So that is gonna be very unfortunate. Which finally came in early to September. Some thought it was because he'd faced backlash. Nagai later said he told the staff to purposely conceal his name for a bit due to not having a standout career as an animator, considering the lack of overall promotional material in the year leading up to that statement. It seems like a half-truth. Nagai's appointment as director feels like a last-minute decision, so to speak. After I referenced the Totally Not Mark video on X/Twitter, a connected individual reached out with confirmation Nagai wasn't the show's original director. He was a replacement. Exactly. And he did not have that much time to work. We'll see more on that later on. Another person later confirmed the original director's identity, of which I can't get into for privacy reasons. I tried to see who is actually the director. Couldn't find information. Less about getting someone in trouble for leaking information and more so about not wanting to send harassment their way. The most I'll say is that the original director was fit for action. Again, I don't know if this is like a freelance director or someone from JC stuff. I'm guessing it's a freelance director that not really involved in JC stuff. I don't know. They were busy when the new season was announced, and it's unlikely that they were working on One Punch Man much. If at all, between 2022 and 2024, that director was responsible for the original pre-anime trailer was released in 2024 as well. That was Nagai's doing. The staff had a proper director fit for the show in mind, but that person left for reasons I don't know. Same with most of us. Yeah, in-house director, yeah. It's very understandable. At a point, the animation producer and staff can't get greedy and say that they need another good action director. If no one's schedule is free, or no one with the experience of serious directing is willing to take the burdensome task of being One Punch Man's director, the job eventually falls elsewhere. Nagai is considered to be trustworthy and reliable for his peers and colleagues. Younger staff like Kento Fukuda has effectively referred to him as like a real One Punch Man. Not because he's bald and strong and can punch through buildings, but his, his output, you can say, as a storyboard artist. He storyboarded at 8 times speed than the average storyboard artist. Crazy. While veteran staff speaks about him as being a true professional, one animator who reached out privately said it's easy to work with him, and his status as a veteran makes him more capable of juggling the workload compared to younger, but more ambitious staff. Nagai is known for effective storyboarding and having boarded for a total of 24 episodes in 2023 to 2024. 12 per year. Crazy bag work. He's probably the fastest storyboard artist JC Staff has on hand. The original director's departure put a heavy burden on the production and meant that they had least less time to make new seasons with the replacement. So it makes sense to get someone who works fast. Again, this is not because Nagai is good at storyboarding action. This is more so about emergency replacement rather than rather than replacing someone more fitting. We're replacing someone more fitting in terms of workload, how fast it is to get it done, because we need that, and Nagai knows that. So yeah, and also the director, the original director leaving got a lot of shit. Probably had to take a couple of days or maybe weeks or maybe 1 month, for to find a new person. And also, if that original director done pre-production and Shinpei Nagai was brought into this show after pre-production is done, it's gonna be very hard to it's gonna be very hard for Nagai to really understand what the project is, because again, he wasn't the one involved in pre-production, probably the most essential part you know about the show, because it's the director's vision on creating everything, on what they want, how they want it to be, how they want to look. And if Naga was not a part of that, he had to probably do some more pre-production stuff down the line. So at just, of course, probably pre-production wasn't done because the storyboards was not made. So before the original director leaving, so that was another thing. Where was I? Wait, there we go. There are likely a number of directors more fit to be job directing, but no director primary job at some point had to have something really for broadcast. If no other capable directors are willing to take the job on, and affecting efficient directors, a good alternative that director will take and to make something good. That's part of their job too, but that's extra. Given his thought, anime Evokoi accurately accentuate the theory that Nagai started working on One Punch Man sometime in 2015. Sorry, 2025. Again, Iwakari was not a part of the production, but some of his friends was, which leave only months to go through both the pre-production process and start animation production, depending on when he joined. 2025 does not mean January 2025. It could be mid 2025, you could say. Oh shit. Wait, what happened? Well, that was weird. Anyways, given thought Evakoi started production department when joined. The job includes finalizing settings like creatures and character design, working with the CG department for modeling, art meetings to decide on general aesthetic with the color design, and yeah, you get pre-production. That's how pre-production works. Tangent, similar situation. I want to mention a series called Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer. I've definitely seen some clips. Yeah, it looks very bad. It's an edition adaptation of the manga Satoshi Mizukami. I know this manga is very high praise. I think in Mal is a, let me see, 5.6 and the manga 8.3. That's good. Sorry. That's crazy. So yeah. So an adaptation manga by was fairly hyped up following the anime's announcement. Fan ended up severely disappointed by the adaptation. On top of rushing the story, the animation is blatantly poor quality in several aspects probably. It's easy to blame primarily Studio NAS for the project undoing, and while they do bear part of responsibility, the full story is more than just NAS dropped the ball. I know NAS not really the best studio. Of course, they're not better than fucking JC stuff or even Studio Engi at that. In terms of animation, of course. Sorry. Deleted tweet. Oh, it's Reddit. I can't go on Reddit. Oopsie. Original Arthur mentioned that someone joined the project as a core staff member, which rocked the production. Really? The that person had creative differences with the author, who also acting as co-series composition writer, and other staff members at the script stage and later left the project. Their departure effectively collapsed production, leading to remaining staff members and replacements to try and pick everything up with less time that they had. That story is pretty explicit and fair to the idea that this person was the director, Nobuaki Nakanishi, the show's credited director and presumed replacement, is not credited in a single episode for storyboards and or episode direction, which series director typically do at least one, though not always. In this season, just before Biscuit Hammer aired, he was also concurrently directing a series at Studio Jumondu. He got Jumondu, they were also credited as the episode Biscuit as production assistant. Indicating that the series was basically a co-production between Naz and Jumondo, as narrative work that Naz could not provide. The animation producer and animation coordinator and production desk are also fitted with Jumondo. Damn! Blame for the show's upsetting turn that shouldn't be shifted to Jumondo, though. Of course. They're just helping this fucking falling production. And even then, even co-production didn't really help them. Both studios had that. Another series, Arifureta, from as read Y Fox, was announced in 2017, and then delayed to January 2018, just 3 months before it was meant to premiere. Staff, including the scriptwriter, director, character design, were all replaced, and the show was delayed to July 2019. Y Fox also either backed out or was removed from the lead producer on the project. The studio received co-credits and ended up producing 4 episodes, but primarily production shifted to Ash Reed. Interesting. Pura Plus? Yeah, they did 4 episodes. And some episodes from to Studio Pura Plus. Crazy. Interesting. Well, I fucked it with the studio also. Yeah, but primarily production shifted to Ashreed. Pre-production had to be entirely redone. A new script, new storyboards, and etc. were needed. That's crazy. None of the original team's name made it into the finished product. Everything was redone. It's imperfect and it had some ugly CGI, but extra time, money ensured the staff could make something out of it. I don't really, uh, I haven't really watched Arifureta, so I can't really comment on this. If One Punch Man director was swept out and the team had to start over from some point, a good course of action is for the committee to delay the series and for the studio to organize resources to support it. At least in an idealistic sense, Naga's job then is to take on a heavily burdened project and make something happen, even if it's, quite frankly, sucks. Dun, dun, dun. Cuts a lot of Naga presumably worked on storyboards into mid 2025, given how now delete tweet account had a post sometime in August that said he finished storyboarding in August, 2 months before broadcasting. Follow One Punch Man storyboard every episode except episode 9 and co-directed episode 7. Episode 9 was the Takashi Hashimoto episode, the Gundam Child Emperor. While I don't find One Punch to be exemplatory, whatever, of his capabilities on what he would have done with the work in better circumstances. Oh, I just spilled my water. Nice. Anyways, I do just want to claim that Naga storyboards for the series are mostly screenshots of the manga. Yes, it's very one to one to one. Was it because, again, production time schedules, he probably didn't have no choice. He knows how bad the conditions are, and one lead to another, one to one manga panels. And again, I don't think Nagai is not the most capable director, of course. For One Punch Man, of course, he wasn't planning to be the director for the show. He just it got brought into the show because of his fast-paced storyboarding work. So yeah, a couple of reasons director detail, blah, 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 yeah, blah blah blah. It's not laziness. There's also yeah. Historically, this method of storyboarding has been frowned upon by the industry. It's become more prominent as producers seek adaptation that closely follows the source material, and directors are given less freedom in how they approach them. Previously, One Punch storyboards have pasted manga panels into their work too, but the rumors isn't about Naga using manga panels here and there. It's the rumor that Naga is essentially using the manga as the storyboard. I think he also mentioned it somewhere. I forgot. With manga panels. Naga essentially to be the quickest storyboard artist, but is that because he's always copy and paste panels? It's hard to say without being familiar with the source material for a series that has been involved with, but he does take the time to hand draw storyboards in every example of his work that I've come across. He even did a live storyboarding section at CG World Convert Way Director Storyboards Theory Sessions. Ooh. Oh yeah, I've seen this before. I've seen some paneling. Crazy back work. Sorry, storyboards, yeah. Season 3 had an egregious number of scenes with background and character panning shots that stays on screen for an uncomfortable amount of time. Yes, there was a lot. The staircase scene, the meetings, they had to cut a lot of corners, unfortunately. It was very bad without any visual interest to keep the audience engaged. As the series goes on, it becomes a slug, and the episodic pacing doesn't mesh really well with the content of the episode. Again, the storyboards are another thing. The direction was also very lackluster. Of course, the pot thing too about Fubuki and Silverfang just having hot pot. Again, it could also mean that the restriction of the storyboards can also make fault in the direction, but I think just time was just not on their side. In a conference, Naga explained the constraint of TV anime storyboarding. Says the average production generally tries to stay under 300 cuts of animation, sticking closer to 250, which is mentored Hidekazu Sato from Studio Satellite taught him. CG World notes that Nagai can finish parts of storyboards in around 2 days, mentioning he could potentially storyboard an entire episode in little as half a week. Crazy bag work. Note there are also other inference in average numbers of cuts, but they generally within some ballpark. Anime storyboard artist Ginsan, for example, says the average TV anime is probably 250. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Okay. Storyboards take between 3 to 4 weeks to make, but some storyboard artists are meticulous to the point that it actually hurts the production. Yasuo Umetsu talk about this being an obstacle on his Kite interview. Other directors like Yoshihiko Tomino in his youth can speedrun storyboards and draw an entire episode worth in span of week or less. Oh god, it's Chimbo. I've seen I think it was a Sangatsu. I think like some storyboards had retakes, and it took them like what, couple of weeks more, even like couple of months, maybe like a month or more. Again, Shaft is very meticulous, right? And there's a lot of idiosyncrasies, whatever it was called, and kind of now Shaft don't really do that much because the industry can't really do that anymore. Of course, there's industries like Nin Koro was another thing. It was still very Shaft worthy, but yeah, it's very hard to produce those type of animes now for Shaft. And again, Shaft's infrastructure is also very bad. A lot of drama behind the scenes. Not just talking about the main highlight animator. There's also other stuff probably from that studio. Agre Shinbo infamous for delaying productions on how long his storyboards corrections can take, said his storyboarded his episode in Hidamari sketch in around a week. While cuts limitations are meant to average production, there are some okay, including director's style, content. Yep, okay. Again, priority director's average production, and there's not average productions. So if it's like their time lowering the burden of staff, again, yes, the storyboards are a thing for the staff for it's less trading. So yeah, they don't have to draw crazy, crazy perspectives. It's just very one to one with the manga, and it's just like sometimes just a close up shot, or it's just like a upward shot that lasts like I don't know 1 minute. So that's gonna be yeah. Several episodes turned out pretty bad, and a production crunch still happened. So was it worth it? There's no right answer. If he hadn't storyboarded the episodes himself, some episodes may have been more interesting to watch. Again, I've said this before. You could fault Nagai, not saying you should harass him. No, I'm saying that if he didn't storyboard every episode and had some episodes to have more ample time, it could have been better. But he did deliver episode 8. That was probably the best episode. So yeah, of course, if you didn't storyboard every episode and have some other storyboarders do some episodes, maybe the pivotal moments, it could have been less burden for him and also more leeway time for some episodes. But storyboards require storyboard meetings with the director and then aforementioned week to draw. Not to mention storyboard checks for coherent continuity or other possible issues. Are Naga storyboards for 1 point good for the most part? Not really. He's done better, to be blunt. Disco lights. Holy disco disco. Here goes. Neon filters. Colors you can wait. I forgot the song. Neon filter, they're mostly colored appeal to the digital cell. Again, this is not a compositing thing. These are colored into the characters, as you can see. It's literally, you know, what you call it. If I make a circle and then I fill it with black, it's like that. It's not a compositing thing. So yeah, it's not compositing layers. It's actual. It's the actual colors of the character. There are not filters, okay? They're actual colors in the fucking drawing cell. Some shots use heavier compositing or maybe completely alter the color in the compositing stage, but most of the so-called neon shots are just wacky cell coloring. One of my instruments are brought into the rim lighting due to light source. They're meant to make the character pop off the screen. It did work for a couple episodes, but they did it a bit too much. And the one episode that didn't have any neon coloring was the one that Naga was not a part of. So yeah, I don't think these weirdly colored shots are inherently bad. They're not. This one is really good. There's some shots that didn't really need it, but they're not bad every single time. But yeah, really bad in concept as similar to style of use of in animation that can be found in 1970s, maybe even the 1600s. sorry, not 1600s, 1960, that do look good for a record, but they do feel random or less cool than they're meant to be. Again, yeah. Sometimes it's just very random. They put that there, and the overall usage was just not good sometimes. Especially for sorry, for a certain character. Garou. They can be used for aura, or they can be used for funny reaction shots. They can feel menacing, but there have to be an understood intent or expression that can be in front. Again, it's just like random colors putting in without any like coherent visual storytelling. You can say they're just using it because it looks cool. What I don't like about them is pure aesthetic choice is the fact that they've turned the chroma up so high that the neon, it's a pop style that feels unbefitting of the series and the scene they're in. It might look better, but it might look better with desaturated colors. The colors are used for every character introduction in the scene episodes, or even just for reactions to the most uninteresting information. With no meaningful expression, it becomes overbearing and irritating. Yes, the more and more and more. Again, the first one or two, three episodes, it was fine for me, but then sometimes they just spam it nonstop. So yeah, like these like this one is not good. There's a lot of like blooming and all such. It's not the best. The drawing quality is also not good. But like this Purple Prisoner one, this one is a very good example. So yeah, and also like the purple lighting thing too because he's gay. Anyways, hey, these are the shots that they're trying to use. Yeah, very menacing. I love it. Resourcement and animation. The first four episodes had decent quality artwork, even though they don't move much. True. The layout are fine. The animation supervision are pretty good. Issued permission, primarily being storyboarded. Primarily in the boring storyboarding, and 3 being notably lower quality than the others. Yes. I think episode 3 was the hotpot scene. And some just very weak storyboards. Also, the fight by Gar was not really the best directed. It was very off pace and some other stuff. So, yeah, the pre-anime trailer was probably better. They changed it to make it less. They changed it to make it more awkward. So that's not really the best decision. But show wasn't going to be melting. These episodes are personally inoffensive. Beside the bland presentation, I hope this meant the show it looked okay or even good, with resources being thrown where it mattered. Unfortunately, those hopes died a little with episode 5. Yes. The first full action episode just gone to shit. Hoper's lost, guys. Make it clear that the staff at least intended for episode to be something more. Again, episode 5, even with so much bad going on, you had the Van Oba cut, you had Aoki's cut, you had FX animation cut, forgot his name, and a lot of others, right? But you're interesting episodes, and the worst episodes of the series, 6, 7. Sorry. And 10 are all pretty bad, yes. Oh my god, episode, what was it? Was it episode before 8? I think it was 7 or 6. It was so bad. It was the outsource episode. It was the gross outsource episode. Not only having all the pirates issues, but also having bad drawings, issues with layout artists not drawing past the cell block, a frame border, and those making it beyond the composite stage. And some notable animation arc, and then like this one, yep. This was crazy. Yes, this thing. Progress. Yeah, he loves talking about Shaft. A screenshot. Yeah. Episode 8 goes, yeah, we know all this. Fascinating background. Episode 11 was rushed, but its main action segment is half decent through the 2D animation. It was, yeah. Episode 11 was the Pretty Prisoner one, right? And Atomic Samurai. Wait, how many episodes does it? One Punch Man. Oh yeah, so episode 11 was the Atomic Samurai episode. Episode 11 was probably one of the better episodes, enjoyment wise, because it was actually cohesive in terms of the direction. But its main action segment is halfway decent through 2D, 3D effort, who's unfortunately couldn't finish all their work for the episode on time. We've seen that. Atomic Samurai could have had like more movement and other stuff. It's a confirmation. Episode 12 was the Aoki cut at the end. Director needs to take in account circumstances that a series has to will go through storyboarding large amount of cuts, manpower every department. More movement and more complex angles often need more resources and time. They aren't a ton of action specialists constantly free and waiting to be picked up like hitchhikers after all. Yes. Ooh, Witch Hat. That's not Witch Hat. She discussed this concept in 2007, sorry. Shaft stuff, okay. I think this was a UFO table project, right? Yeah, Genichiro Arbe was there too. Who was the show assistant director and episode director. The scene was made that way because he knew Abe was around and that they could allocate time for Abe to make that cut. Again, capable people, capable animators being called in because they know their capabilities. And yeah, 2 minute cut of just characters rotating, just complex shit, crazy. Of course, Abe can do that because he's him. Without Abe's talent and without the time allocated, the scene would have been approached differently. These ideas extend to other departments, to the series directing too. Abe did 5 minutes. A lot of people did long cuts in that movie, so I'm not surprised. Oh my god, I spilled myself. Animators like Kenjaki, yeah. The Sushi Ninjas hire Nakamura, Odrich, and Tanzard, a bunch of other big name animators because One Punch Man schedule in mind. They may not be available to work at all costs. Again, people are busy. Just a lot more animes a lot of more animes being made, and also not much talent is available. And also take in mind the schedule. Most people don't want to work on that very hellish schedule without you know again, some people worked on Mappa, right? Vincent, because he wanted to just help a friend out. That's the thing, right? Tyler doesn't really have much, people connections with JG stuff, so yeah. Well, maybe he's in the studio right now. Who knows? He is. That means the artist praise skill has been able to clean up their work based on these LOs and they can't just be a good artist. They also have to be fast artists capable of meeting both the schedule and the LO's ambition. We've seen this. Chansard didn't finish his. Well, basically, season 5, Chansard only did the LO, and Chansard didn't know the schedule, and he just sent the LO. But the people in Bones realized, oh shit, we didn't have time, so they had another person reanimate the scene, and at the end, the product was not really the LO that they wanted to be. It was less movement, very less movement. So, yeah, season 5 was probably the worst scheduled one. So as a Blue Lock, Blue Lock stuff where LO draws. Yes. That's for most shows. How many you want to have? A little bit more. Committee. JJK second season but schedule, Link complete rush. Yep, I mean JJK, right? Second season, probably the worst managed production in anime history. That shows much more higher production value series than One Punch Season 3, but different end results and studio specific problems don't mean they didn't have a shared fundamental grievance. Grievance? Grievance. JJK had a bad schedule, vaguely put. The comedian studio made decisions that led to a production site meltdown. When schedules are behind and the animation still in dire need a lot of corrections and oversight, what MAPA has is money and advantages, resources to pay people, other completely retakes or correct a lot of cuts in a short amount of time. Again, slave work. Second key animation, in betweening, animation directing, blah blah. They have all that shit. Jujutsu Kaisen 3 seems to survive because heavy subcontract and correction retakes take a lot of credits and notable Storyboarding animation directors numbers slowly help Doga and coloring. That comes to a significant cost financially. Again, more shows, more high profile shows now really rely on studios. Wait, my brain's not working. Not studios, more so second key animation and animation just brute forcing shows. Like they know they don't have time for shows, but what they do, they just force in more people to finish in work faster rather than having one person in one role. They just have maybe like, I don't know, 10 people in that role. So yeah, I guess it's Mappa's ideals to work around tight schedules. These stuff are different. They don't really near have much connections with action specialists. Neither season produced by J Staff was handled studio called Action Production Line Kaoru Suzuki's team. Again, the team, even the production line, the team was not really like Suzuki's line, which was the Danmachi line, right? The Asahi Fujishiro line was not really the, what you call it? It's not really the best. Not saying, it's more so about the production line being more busy than the Kaoru Suzuki team. But again, this team is working on Railgun and other projects, right? Both seasons were handled by Fujishiro team and they turned out to be different. Yeah, season 3 was produced 6 years after season 2. Some staff got busy elsewhere. Director's payment, yeah, might cost bills. They have bills to pay within extra content. They have, yep. Still in-house talent like Aoki barely found time to participate in priority scene. This is where GG staff, which is more limited resources, suffer. Once the resources are shifted elsewhere, it's difficult to find more. The studio is busy, so many projects. Again, Aoki basically got taken by Mugen Gacha halfway through, you can say. So that's why his contribution was not really much. Even when he contributed, they didn't even use it in their final product. So womp womp. Recent tweet, yeah, JJK, yeah. It's bullshit thing. So production committees get portion the art sold. Yeah, animation companies only get negative contract, a company ranking, company. Yep. Not every production company necessarily cares about product or studios. Again, they care about money, even if they don't care how good the show looks. So, yeah, they just want their investment to come back as fast as they can. Okay, which is reasonable in a sense. You don't want to wait 3 years for that. No one wants to. That's a lot of time. As non-company one point digital stuff, paying out of pocket isn't a financial burden they risk because they have no way of recuperating these costs through the series success. So that Bandai is giving the series pennies for a budget, just that the brand aid they needed to buy to a fix. Sorry. A lot of problems are probably more expensive and the baseline budget they've given. Rushing. At some point, series director Nagai was joined by Miyuki Ishida, who took on the role of assistant director to help split some of his director and debuts, make the series a little more manageable. Again, Miyuki Ishida is the assistant director. for One Punch Man season 3, of course. Ishida is one of the songwriters staff. She was a part of studio's coloring department for over 20 years, which saw her at color designer for cast of other shows. Yep, Toradora. She started directing episodes in 2015, fully transitioning into directing by 2019. She started with first episode of series, which is generally a big responsibility. Some examples: Sugar Apple, Fairytale, Children in Another World, but yep, Dover Damsel, The Story of Love. The problem presented is by Ishida's appointment as assistant director is that she was already busy. Though Nagai board 3 episodes of Cannibal Girl Friendship. Yep, Nagai did some episodes in that. Ishida was actively involved as an episode director, including having responsibilities in the final product as a series. Which again, knowing that it's unlikely that production included far ahead of the production. Again, this anime was also a part of the same animation producer, basically the same production line as One Punch Man season 3. So they probably had to finish this first more because there's some overlapping, you could say. It's not uncommon for a series to be finished up in days before they do at the production, days to a week before the air. We know One Punch Season 3 is a show produced in those circumstances, though and unfortunately kept in clapped frame in episode 8, showing an individual cut finish date at a photography compositing stage. While this was presumably to be the case from the start, the frame is confirmation. Again, multiple episodes are finished very late. Probably only having like a couple days before the air date, or even a couple hours before the air date when they only finish it. So yeah, that's not really a a bad thing, you could say. The ghosting, yeah. Basically saying this is not a cry for help, whatever, blah blah blah. Flexing on commenting artist's name behind the key, noted that this frame was likely cut out properly, thus wouldn't show up if it was rendered standard, but that the dimming / ghosting tool used to meet Japan's TV recognition pool for so 7. He provided another example that is happening in Naruto Shippuden more than a decade ago. Again, more people. Aoki didn't really have his cuts in the final product. We know that. Something. Oh, here we go. You're gonna be assumed that this also happened. Ruby had some issues as corrections by chief animation directors were posted on Twitter, but didn't get to the final product. At the end, they changed it only at the final cut / Blu-ray releases, so it didn't actually go through when the show was actually airing. So yeah, something like Pluto Mathematica, series director Yukihiro Miyamoto joined around August or September 2010. Turned out better than One Punch Man despite being a rushed mess itself. Madoka Magica turned out good because animation producer Tadao Iwaki and production desk Yasuhiro Okada worked to make the show schedule manageable for the in-house staff by negotiating a considerable number of outsourced episodes to reliable studios they know. The schedule was by no means suddenly a luxury, but it allowed for in-house episodes to receive true priority focus. She have only produced 5 episodes of Madoka in-house. Every other episode was planned by totally or partially outsourced to a different studio. You can see here. Damn. 1, 2, 3, partially outsourced. Wow. You have Artland, Dio Media, C2C. Also, this is a joint. Dio Production, Tezuka Production. Damn. Madhouse. That's crazy. Yeah, I saw some. I've seen some clips Sorry, not some pictures from Sarka about the comparison between Blu-ray version for Madoka. Most gross outsourced episodes also weren't usually subcontracted. Many of them were primarily contracted studios like Madhouse, Day Productions, Artland. These were strong primary contractors with the staff that is capable of meeting a single episode's deadline and capable of doing much more of an effort themselves without needing to subcontract different pieces of the work to a ton of different studios. Series director wasn't given the task starting production by September. Most of their work in regards ongoing main staff director. Okay, yeah. Comparing that with Tim Minaga's rush job for One Punch Man, he didn't just do Miyamoto's job; he had to do everything Miyamoto didn't do too, which is crazy. This is also uh One Punch Man, yeah, in house, crazy. It's pretty uninteresting gross outsource list. Basically, there's gross outsource, uh, what you call it? There's basically gross outsource or outsource, but like, this is one assisted. This is like not really outsourced, but a lot of help from these studios like AAA. This is fully outsourced. This was outsourced, but the outsourcing was also stupid because X10, it was outsourced to X10, and then it was also outsourced by them to another studio. So, yeah, that's crazy. And it was season two was also, yeah, Studio Land. It's episode, I forgot what episode it was. Studio Land. It was one of the fight in the later half. Season two was produced all in house. There was still subcontracting, of course, like most animes, like the notorious Land Studio. I think they had like Yen Bien and Julian Bentley and other stuff like Ryan White. So that's crazy. A layout on some episodes of One Punch can start at one studio, end up at another studio for clean up second KA, and end up to another studio for animation director's corrections. Repeat same idea in between, yeah. Just getting lost more and more because of different studios and bad communications. This was errors, yep, six fingers. I think it was three boobies or something with Mizuki. Yeah. Single boob. Three boobs. She also has six fingers, yep. People like accused them of like AI, but this is just a mistake on its own. I understand why fans want to compare every season of the show. It's explosive for a season, but that's a boring way of looking at the show and trying to understand whether it's the current release season to look way they did. Season 1 didn't look as good as it did simply because it's Madhouse, nor it's because it had a bigger budget or even a participation long production time. Madhouse produced Police in a Pod, Trillion Game. I think Trillion Game wasn't really the best looking. I don't know about this one though. This one? Oh yeah, this one. This one looked okay, I guess, but not like the art style is very generic. Which are series that are far lower in production value than their version of One Punch Man. The difference despite them both being Madhouse series, none of them are action series. The real answer is that One Punch Man animation producer is Yuichiro Fukushi. The other two are led by primarily Mariko Ashikawa. Ashikawa series mostly handled Doctor Movies. Yep. I think Liar's Game also this season. This is by Madhouse, as you can see, Madhouse. And the first episode was already outsourced to another studio. This is just usual Madhouse, so it's not really surprising. Oh, sorry. I think it's also by Doctor Movies, if I'm not wrong. I mean, look at that. Just Korean names. Korean names, Korean names, Korean names. Yeah. It's just Animation Production Corporation, Doctor Movies. There we go. So, yeah. Madhouse only really has one production line that can really just go all out, and some other stuff, but most of the time it's just a shit show at the end of the day. Yeah, season 1 was just not good because long production time and big budget, right? It had a moderate budget, an average budget, but again, Natsume got his connection. Same with Fukushi. Fukushi was the one that brought in Nakamura, so yeah, a lot of talent on there because of connections. Yeah, we saw this character designer, Kashi Kubota, talking about budget. Had a generous budget. So, yeah. And the end. Bad art exists. There will be bad adaptations and bad anime for as long as animation exists as a medium. Just as good artists sometimes create bad art, and bad artists still makes bad art and will continue to do so. A lot of these bad art pieces are made in context that did advantage this artist making it. We can hope that it won't happen to our favorites, and we can criticize series endlessly when it does happen. But there's no gift or passion and love that becomes unruly hate like that one bitch. Reaction channel. It's good to talk why art is bad or good. In One Punch Man season 3's case, it's a lot of the bad parts with some good, a lot of lows, some highs, like one episode and some others, but most of them, all of them, like 75% of them, 70% were, yeah, not the best. Each part of art theory isn't focused on art itself, but rather the process. Artists commonly talk about the process and how that process affects the product. The process is important to the product. Again, time is important. If I want to make fried rice, it will take me like half an hour. If I try to make you fried rice in like 30 seconds, you can't. It will taste fucking dog shit. Not just physical process of recreating, but mental process of why. As for part 2, season 3, Nagai might not have been a good choice of director for the series itself, but I think the show can find success if he stays. If he leaves, it repeats itself. The studio doesn't have another director already willing to take on the show, then part 2 will probably just end up as a repeat of part 1. At least Nagai has experience with the worst of the worst, has an idea of what it's like to direct One Punch Man. I wouldn't say season 3 is really rock bottom. There are definitely worse shows out there in subjective technical analysis. Debate. I like to imagine Nagai can only improve from here, even if it's just a little. My own selfishness wants to see Nagai soul in the series, though. I'm interested in what he can do with the show on more of his own terms. We'll just holy shit. We'll just have to find out soon. Well, that was the blog. Almost an hour of me talking. My throat hurts. And yeah, this was very informational. A lot of stuff. Some stuff I didn't really know about this anime. Where is it? Yeah, Arifureta too. I didn't know about that one. This one too. Yeah, a lot of stuff happens. Same stuff occurring as One Punch Man. Of course, One Punch Man is more of the extreme with a team with not much manpower like Mappa, right? Of course, okay, let's be honest. If Mappa was the one with One Punch Man and they had the same schedule, of course it would have looked way better. But you know, we have J Stuff instead. I know J Stuff is capable, but they don't really have the manpower to really, you know, to really what you call it, to really like just plow through, unlike the slaves in Mappa. But yeah, that was the blog. Shout out to Sarka again, very good person. If you wanna Very, very good person. Very, very, very good informative Twitter account. If you want to see his stuff, you can go to Twitter. And also he does a lot of shaft stuff. Talk about a lot of shaft stuff. So if you want to see that too, go to his Twitter. And yeah, I don't want to do an outro because my throat hurts.